Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Just start pounding that like button. Martin Frank is in the house. Come on. That means you have to hit the like button. You have the Delaware News Journal. Mr. Frank, it's been a while. How you been?
Yeah, I've been pretty good. Just coming off the big bye week, spent most of it learning all the Taylor Swift songs, so I'll be ready. Right?
Get ready for the Kelseys to meet the Swifts out in Kansas City, Martin. That's the big story. Forget about the game.
Well, which Kelsey Swift are we talking about? Jason and DeAndre or Travis and I forget her name.
That would be Taylor, in case you're wondering.
Right.
Swift. Yeah, she's kind of a big deal. If I'm not as keen on her entire body of work of songs either, but I do know who Taylor Swift is. I want to reference one of our streamers here, made a specific point here in the last couple of minutes. I want to ask it of you, Martin Frank.
Sure.
Bobby Murphy says, hopefully our Eagles can steal a win in Kansas City on Monday night. If the Eagles win on Monday night, will it be stealing a win?
That's a good question. I would say not necessarily. I mean, if you look at like all the stats going into the game, I mean, the Eagles probably have as good a chance as anybody to go into Kansas City and get a win. I mean, like I was looking at Kansas City's body of work over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and I mean, their offense hasn't been anything special. You don't really see much production from their wide receivers. Even Travis Kelce himself has kind of struggled the last 3 or 4 games. So, I
By the way, that correlates with a certain Swift getting involved in his life. Just saying. Just saying.
Exactly. The Taylor Swift effect. So no, I don't think it'd be a colossal upset. I mean, the Eagles almost should have won maybe the Super Bowl. So, I wouldn't be stunned out of my mind if the Eagles came out with a win here in Kansas City.
Yeah, I look at this Kansas City team, and it's strange to say. In a lot of ways, I think they're similar to Philadelphia because I think a lot of Eagles fans say, all right, the Eagles are 8-1, but where's the impressive stuff? Where's the style points, Martin? I feel the same way about Kansas City, and they've been good for a longer period and more successful for a longer period. But I got to admit, I look at this team up and down. I'm not nearly as scared of them as I typically would be, just as an observer. I got this, to me, doesn't look like the same Kansas City team. Is that unfair?
No, it's not unfair. I mean, I don't see the great, offense that they had last year. That's for sure. They scored 9 points, I think, and lost to Denver. They played Denver again and, barely eked out, a win. I think they scored 17 maybe that game. They only scored 21 against Miami. I mean, they haven't been lighting it up at all on offense, especially the last 4 or 5 games. So I don't know. I mean, it seems like they might be a little bit vulnerable. The Eagles are good at, assuming Jalen Hurts is healthy or healthier, they could like eat time off the clock with the ball controlled offense, keep Mahomes off the field as much as possible. I mean, I could see it being a relatively low scoring game. And if that's the case, I mean, the Eagles have just as good a chance to win that as Kansas City does. So I can see it being a pretty close, tight game. I don't think it'll be the shootout that it was last year in the Super Bowl, but I think the Eagles would have a pretty good chance to win Monday night.
All right, let me ask you about one of the points you just made. The Eagles could go ball control and try and keep the ball out of the Kansas City offensive hands. Can they? The Eagles' rushing attack last month or so hasn't been great. John and I have a specific opinion on that the biggest deterrent is the non-+1 factor, that Jalen hasn't been running the football, which when you go RPOs and you don't believe that the guy's going to keep it and run with it, you can pay that much more attention to the running back. And I think it has made Mr. Swift, not Taylor, Mr. Swift's life a little bit more difficult. Absolutely. We won't know till we get out there on Monday whether Jalen is a factor in the running game, will we?
No, we won't. But I mean, he'll definitely have to be. I mean, we'll find out pretty soon, early in the game, if that's a legitimate threat or not. And also, I think another factor which will definitely help the running game is, I'm assuming, the return of Cam Jurgens at right guard. I mean, if you look at the numbers, from when he played the first 4 games, I think they were averaging 165 yards a game on the ground. I mean, I'm sure a lot of that had to do with Hurts being healthy too. But, those two factors together, I think, will definitely help the Eagles running game. Hurts has had 2 weeks pretty much to, rest the knee and everything. I'm not saying it's going to be 100%, but I think it's going to be better than what we saw, especially at the end of the first half in the Dallas game when he got hit on the knee with DeMarcus Lawrence's helmet and everything. So I assume they're going to want to establish, the RPO threat, and I think that's going to be key to their success. And I also think Cam Jurgens returning is going to be pretty key to their success of being able to, have a ball control type of offense, keep Kansas City's offense off the field, and hopefully, come out with the win in this case.
Okay, Martin, both teams coming off a bye week, so you don't see that a lot, but we know the history. Was that your first move when you were getting ready for the bye to text Andy Reid and say, "Coach, how do I do this? How do I do it?" It's been an amazing success. He was 13-1 here, 13-1 coming off buys. And his lone loss was the last year, which went completely off the rails.
Sure.
So at one point he was 13-0, and it's continued in Kansas City. He lost his first one. I think he's won 8 of 9 since after the bye. Is it just luck? Is it what does Andy Reid do that nobody else can do?
I don't know. That's a great question. I mean, Andy's always been really good at like detailing everything. I remember when he first got the Eagles job back in 1999. I remember like Jeffrey Lurie saying something like how overwhelmed he was by seeing Andy Reid with all these notebooks of exactly how practices would go and who would do what, how the proper way for an offensive lineman to line up and everything. So I mean, I'm sure he just uses that extra time and like really takes a deep dive into the upcoming opponent and then kind of like looks at opponents down the road and figures that out, because like Andy Reid's also been a great second half of the season.
Yeah. It's
So
more than just after the bye. Yeah.
I guess he's not going to the Bahamas for like a week and a half or anything like that. I mean, he's probably like in his office there at the Chiefs facility, like going over film. Maybe he leaves instead of like at 2 a.m, maybe he leaves at 11 at night or something like that and goes home. Gets a couple of extra hours here and there of rest. But yeah, I mean, Andy Reid's a Hall of Fame coach for a reason. I mean, the guy knows what he's doing. He's known what he's doing for the last 24, 25 years. So I'm sure he'll have a great game plan. I'm sure he'll know everything there is to know about the Eagles and how they run their offense and defense and, best ways to exploit them. I mean, we saw that in the Super Bowl with the fourth quarter touchdowns. He knew exactly, the kind of defensive alignment the Eagles would be in. They had, the two guys wide open for, touchdowns from the 4 and 5 yard line. So I'm sure he'll have a pretty good game plan for Monday night as well.
So what you're saying is if his tight end had asked him to accompany him to South America for Taylor's tour, Andy would have passed? You're probably right about that. He had prepping to do for the return after the bye. All right. Here's a question that I have, Martin, that I don't know the answer to, so I need your help. The Kansas City Chiefs are the least sacked team in the National Football League. Patrick Mahomes has only been sacked 12 times all year long. And we've seen a team, the Washington Commanders, say, oh, yeah, we're just not going to let you sack it. We're going to get the ball out of the quarterback's hand so fast that your speed rushers on the outside, as great as they are, just aren't going to be able to get there because we're not going to give you a shot at it. That's been part of what Kansas City's done this year. Improved offensive line play, better tackles than they had last year in the Super Bowl. John said he's not even sure this team is as good as the one that won the Super Bowl last year. I think they're better along the offensive line. That's why Mahomes only has 12 sacks. How did the Eagles combat that? Do they just stick to their Fangio philosophy of, yeah, we're just going to let you dink and dunk us underneath. Go ahead. We'll tackle you. We'll stop you. We'll not let you go big plays against us? Or do you think that because the defensive coordinator showed the ability to at least try some different things every once in a while, blitzes, bring a linebacker, Nick Morrow, another 3-sack game, how will the Eagles put pressure on Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah, I think yes to all of that. I mean, whatever, they're going to try a bunch of stuff, and whatever works, they're going to stick with it. I mean, if it's a case where, like, I can see even Hassan Reddick like dropping into coverage if Mahomes is getting the ball out really quick.
That will not go well with Eagle Nation.
No, but if
they hate when that happens.
Gotta throw a curveball. Gotta throw a curveball.
Quickly, like, why not have like Hassan Reddick like fake that he's going in, pick up the tight end if he's lined up over him, and try to make a play there. I mean, I would think anything is possible in this case. I mean, the Eagles have had 2 weeks to prepare too, so I'm sure Sean Desai might come up with a wrinkle here and there to kind of keep Mahomes off balance. I mean, it's hard to keep Mahomes off balance because he's seen pretty much everything, but
Now, there's a mentality, and you know this, Martin, around the Eagles fan base that the Eagles were the better team. By the way, I agree with that in Super Bowl 57. And they were outcoached by Andy and Steve and Eric Bieniemy at the time. That's sort of the narrative. You mentioned the 2 blown coverages. NFL Films, as they always do, had the great mic'd up of Patrick Mahomes. Chiefs weren't even in the right formation for the Sky Moore touchdown. He was adept on his feet to say, "All right, we're gonna make this work," and he changed the play on the field. Got everybody on the same page in that limited amount of time. And it worked out for the Chiefs. My maintain is they got beat by a Hall of Fame quarterback making on-field just brilliant sort of pivot in a high leverage situation. Is it overstated that Andy Reid, we know how Nick Sirianni feels about when the other coach gets off, whether it's Mike McDaniel, Sean McVay, he takes that to heart. You think he's a little bit more fired up for this game because he wants to prove he can beat the great coaching staff of Andy Reid? Steve Spagnuolo now would be Matt Nagy instead of Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah, I mean, probably. Nick's a prideful guy. Like, the stats are out since like the start of the 2022 season. He's got the best record of any coach in the NFL, and since 21, maybe I think Andy Reid's the only one with a higher percentage. I mean, Nick knows all those stats. I'm sure he wants to establish himself as like, hey, I'm the best young coach in the NFL. I can beat Andy Reid. I mean, I'm sure that plays into it. Nick's a prideful guy. I mean, we've seen that. Whether it's the Beat Dallas shirt 2 years ago that kind of like didn't work out or whatever, but him going into the stands after they beat the Colts, to kind of get back at them firing Frank Reich. We've seen like Nick Sirianni has, so yeah, he knows he's going up against Andy Reid, a Hall of Fame coach, and Reid kind of got the best of him in the Super Bowl, and Sirianni wants to say that, hey, we're right there too, and we can beat you guys just as much as you guys can beat us.
So what do you think Sirianni's message is this week? And it'll be multifaceted. I just saw a clip from Jason Kelsey talking about he thinks Nick Sirianni, who played for Andy Reid and Doug Peterson and Chip Kelly, he said that he thinks Sirianni is the best individual, personal relationship coach that he's ever played with, that he works the rooms and he knows how to prep guys and he knows how to run a meeting, and that's a main reason for his success. What's his main message going to be? It'll be many things, but one has to be top above all others. What do you think he taps into? Revenge, Andy Reid, Mahomes and Jalen doing battle for the MVP. There's a lot of different ways you can play that this week.
Yeah.
They create the underdog. They're the actual underdog by 2.5 points. How do you think, what's the main motivational chord that Nick Sirianni's going to hit this week.
Well, I think he kind of has to be a little bit careful not making this game bigger than it is. You often hear the adage, like, you know, if you lose this game, don't lose it twice. You know what I mean? Like, if you gear up and make this game everything and then you fall short, well, you still have Buffalo on a short week, you know, on Sunday back home. And then the week after that, you have San Francisco in an NFC Championship game rematch. And then the week after that, you've got the Dallas Cowboys down in Dallas, who obviously want revenge after the way they lost the last game. So, yeah, I mean, it's you can't make this whole game the season. I mean, yes, you want to win. Obviously, it's a big statement if you knock off the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs and everything like that. But, you know, I would think Sirianni's message would be along the lines of, you know, we're going to do what we can to win this game. It's a big game for us, but it's not the game for us. We've got bigger goals ahead of us. Obviously, they want to get back to the Super Bowl, and they're in pretty good position to do so. But that's as long as they take care of their business the next 5 weeks with the schedule they have coming up. I mean, if they go into Kansas City, put it all out on the line and come up short, and now they're beat again when they play Buffalo, well, now they got a 2-game losing streak, and, you know, maybe Dallas or Detroit or somebody is in first place in the NFC now, and the Eagles have some work to do in order to catch up. So, you know, I think Sirianni's message is kind of like along those lines, like, let's not make this bigger than it is. I mean, yes, we're just as good as they are. We can beat them in Kansas City, but, you know, it's not the end of the world if we don't. We've got bigger things ahead of us, and let's focus on that.
If you had, and maybe you do, but if you have sodium pentothal, is it pentothal or I forget. But anyway, if you had any true serum, Martin Frank, and you were able to give it to Nick Sirianni, would he say Dallas before the bye was a bigger game than Kansas City after the bye? Because he was pretty psyched up after beating the Dallas Cowboys. And we all know if you're going to lose a game, and you'd rather lose it to an AFC team than somebody in your division. They want to win them all. They want to get that number 1 seed. But if you had that true serum, what would Nick say?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the Dallas game is obviously bigger. Their one loss this season, I mean, it was an awful loss.
Yeah.
Obviously.
AFC team, at least. Yeah.
AFC team, they're still undefeated in the NFC, and they're still going to be undefeated in the NFC after Monday night, whether they win or lose to Kansas City. And that's one of the tiebreakers, like the best overall conference record. So, yeah, you want to win the division, obviously, and Dallas is your closest challenger, I guess. If they had lost to the Cowboys, you know, we'd be sitting here, tied, right? First place?
Yeah.
So, and Dallas would have the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that game was huge. I mean, beyond huge. And, you know, when they go back to Dallas in a couple of weeks, that's going to be huge too. I mean, yes, they could lose to Kansas City, and yes, they could lose to Buffalo, but they're still undefeated in the NFC. So then they got to come back and find a way to beat, you know, San Francisco and then Dallas, then Seattle, and, well, I mean, last 3 games of the Giants twice in Arizona. So, yeah, I mean, I think Sirianni would love to win this game, but I think beating Dallas was a bigger win for the Eagles.
Beware Jonathan Gannon. Kyler Murray back
Kyler
pretty
Murray's
good last
back.
week. It's not the layup that we might have thought it was prior to, but we got a long way to go. We'll put that aside for a second. Martin Frank, give me a 0 to 10 evaluation. 0 being what? Me worry about? Are you kidding me? Worry? Why would I worry about this? 10 being, yeah, when I'm done with you guys, I have to go into the bathroom because I'm so worried I soiled myself. Where on the scale of 0 to 10 are you with Bradley Roby being the savior at slot corner for the Philadelphia Eagles? What's your worried level of people putting too much stock in Bradley Roby, who's played all of 55 snaps and is supposed to come in and wave his veteran magic wand and all will be well in the slot for the Eagles?
So if I say 10, that means that I'm really worried and I'm about to wet myself?
Yes.
All right, I won't say 10. um,
Zero is you laugh at me. You mock me for even asking the question. You're so sure that Bradley Roby is going to shut down whoever Kansas City puts in the slot on Monday night.
I would go with maybe a 5.
Right in the middle?
Right in the middle. Yeah, I mean, I think he's better than what they have. I mean, you know, I'm not that impressed with Sidney Brown. I mean, Eli Ricks has done a good job, but, you know, if you're in the slot and you got like Travis Kelce coming around and stuff like that, I don't think that's a great outcome. So, I mean, I think Bradley Roby will definitely help. I don't think he'll play a whole game because he hasn't played a whole game all year long. So I still think we're going to see a combination of the three of those guys, Roby, Brown, and Eli Ricks. And, you know, we'll see how it plays out. I think by the end of the game, we should have a pretty good idea of exactly how Bradley Roby's doing. If he's in there, that means he's doing well. If he's not, that means, you know, he's not. So, you know, they're right back where they started, if that's the case. But I think he's definitely going to help. I think he can provide them some pretty good snaps there at nickel, and you know, just the veteran presence I think will help a lot too.
Win, lose, or draw in this particular game. And there's a lot of football to be played after it, but if somebody has a signature performance on a Monday night standalone game between Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, they just might win the MVP if they continue. Jalen Hurts has won, and this is from ESPN Stats and Info, has won 12 consecutive regular season starts against teams with winning records. That is the best mark since 1950. 1950. Now Peyton Manning tied it, the most consistent quarterback of all time, a regular season quarterback. If he does it, if he beats Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, it's his record alone from 1950.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Why is it that people there are certain people, not everyone, but certain people who don't put Jalen Hurts on the Mahomes level, the Lamar Jackson level, whomever, whatever quarterback you want to throw in it? Is it just because he does it in a different way? Because this guy just wins football games. It's pretty astonishing, Martin.
Yeah, I mean, it is astonishing. Like, and not only that, he's 25-2 in his last 27 regular season starts. I think 25. Kind of lose track sometimes, but yeah. I mean, it's astounding just some of the things he's doing, and you know, not all those games are great or pretty. But he finds a way to win. Like, you know, if it takes like sneaking on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1, you know, with the tush push to get a first down, I mean, he's doing that, and that keeps drives going. Like, you go back to the Miami game, in the fourth quarter, they were up by a touchdown. They had 4th and 1 from their 26. The Eagles go for it. Who else does that? You know,
Brandon Staley, but that's it. And that high school coach.
The Eagles actually convert and get the first down. The Chargers don't.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, that's my point. Like, typically every team punts there. Miami has a chance to tie the game, and maybe they do because they have a great offense with Tua and everything. But the Eagles get the first down, so they keep the drive going. And then they face another 4th and 1 from the 37, I believe. They go for it there too, and they get that first down. They end up scoring a touchdown, and all of a sudden they're up by 2 touchdowns, and the game's over. I mean, it wasn't anything beautiful that Hurts did. I mean, he converted 2 4th and 1s with his, you know, tush push sneak and everything. But I mean, that kept the drive going, and that's how they won that game. There's so many examples like that, like through the years and everything, that, you know, you just find a way to win, and certain people are wired that way, and that's, you know, that's the magic of Jalen Hurts. I mean, it doesn't have to be pretty. We saw some games where he's run the ball for over 100 yards, but only thrown for like 150 passing, and they still win. And we've seen other games like recently where he can't really run, but he throws for 300 yards and they find a way to win. So, it's kind of like whatever it takes, he finds a way to do it, and there's definitely something to be said for that. I don't
Agreed.
think you can do that at all.
But let me ask you this, Martin. Who played better in the Super Bowl last year? Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes?
I think Jalen Hurts did.
So do I. Who is the MVP?
Patrick Mahomes, because he
Okay,
won.
so the outcome of the game this Monday night will determine who the favorite is in the MVP going forward. Even if Mahomes puts up better numbers than Jalen does on Monday night, if the Eagles win the game, I'm telling you, Jalen's going to jump him and be the lead candidate as per the betting markets for the MVP. They do, those who say winning is not a quarterback stat. Bullshit. Ask the wagers. Ask those who will be betting for the MVP. I guarantee you whoever wins this game on Monday night is the favorite on Tuesday morning in the MVP race.
Yeah, and I would also add that, like, maybe not in all cases winning isn't like a total stat for a quarterback, but like when you look at 25-2, when you look at 12 straight against,
when you have the outlier, that's where I generally agree with. It's not actually a stat, a quarterback stat, until you get to the outliers, like the Peyton Manning numbers, the Jalen Hurts numbers. Now, then it's like, all right, something's going on here. This is
like the 25-2 thing. I think the other quarterbacks are like Brady, Manning, Joe Montana.
Yeah, we're at 4. I think Jim McMahon is one of them.
Jim McMahon is the other one. I mean, I don't think anybody would consider him a great quarterback, and obviously he was on some of the best defensive teams in NFL history, so he didn't have to do much. But like the other 3 guys, I mean, Brady, Montana.
Brady, Manning, Montana, maybe the 3 most consistent quarterbacks of all time. And Jim McMahon as the outlier, who was on a team. It was a very good player when healthy, but he was on a team with maybe the greatest defense of all time. I would argue the greatest defense of all time.
And by the way, a damn good running back that you could just turn the ball and give it a sweetness and watch him move it down the field.
He was a good player, though. I think people forget he was a very good player when he was healthy, which was not.
Right, but you just gave us the 4 names, John. Which doesn't belong in what?
No,
Brady, Manning, Montana, Jim McMahon. Who doesn't belong out of that?
Well, but some people would say Hurts doesn't belong as well, and I would argue he doesn't have Jim McMahon's defense. He doesn't have the Hall of Fame running back. So I would, that was kind of my point. Not that Jim belongs with those 3. No.
All right, Martin, know full well when you answer this question, we're going to read into it. Now, we give you certainly permission to change your mind between now and Monday, and everyone should read Martin in the News Journal with his preview stuff before the ball kicks off on Monday night. The Eagles will win the game because blank, fill in the blank aspect of the game, an individual player, a matchup you like, or the Eagles cannot get over that Kansas City hump. And once again, Andy Reid has gotten the better of Nick Sirianni because fill in the blank. Which blank do you choose to fill in? And please do so.
I'll fill in the first blank because I think they're going to hold the ball for like 36, 37 minutes. They're going to keep Kansas City's offense off the field, and they're going to do just enough to win the game. That's kind of what I'm going with. I did like last week or earlier in the week a second half preview, and I went game by game and stuff, and I predicted this game to be a victory for the Eagles. And
how many wins you get to, Martin?
14.
14.
Yeah.
All right.
Pretty damn good.
Same as last year. Yeah.
Last game against the Giants I have is a loss because nobody's going to.
They're resting everybody. Yeah. I still think they beat Tommy DeVito, but we'll see. Tyrod Taylor might be back, but
or they could sign Joe Flacco by then. You never know. Who's going to be that quarterback for the
That could be the Tanner McKee game.
Yeah.
Tanner Mack. I want to see Tanner Mack.
The unstoppable Tanner McKee.
You think he's following in Nate Sudfeld's footsteps? He's going to become unstoppable?
You never know. That's tough.
As per Jeffrey Lurie.
In the game that Jeffrey Lurie called Nate Sudfeld unstoppable, I believe he was like 22 or 25, something. He set a single game completion percentage record for about 140 yards.
Yeah, I was going to say, didn't break a buck 50, did he, with those 22 or 25?
How many
Yeah.
points did the Eagles score that
No,
day?
yeah. They were not.
Martin,
They were not pushing the football down the field, as they say.
but they were unstoppable when it comes to completion percentage. Martin, great stuff. You know, we always appreciate it when you jump in with us. Thank you very much for doing it today. Enjoyed the trip out to KC.
All right.
Yeah,
thanks.
at N Frank NFL on X and Reid Martin at Delaware News Journal, DelawareOnline.com.
Thanks.
Martin, thank you. That's Martin Frank from the Delaware News Journal here with us on Birds 365. All right, come back. Got a couple more things I want to run by Johnny Mac. And then about 20 minutes from now, we're going to have Farzin Vasugian, podcast host in Kansas City, hosts the popular podcast Chief Zone. We had Farzin on last week, the week of the Super Bowl, did a nice job with us, so we certainly wanted to have him
I'm going to
back.
give you Parsons' name, the last name. I'll do Noah Tungiai and
I'm
Albert
pretty sure it's
Wegbenam.
Vasugian.
Yeah.
But it could be Vasugian. Well, you know what? Easiest way. Friggin' ask him when he comes on. Farzin, do us a favor. Pronounce your last name for us. We will do that. But
and I'll still get it wrong after he pronounces it.
I've had him on my radio show a couple of times. Does a nice job breaking down the Chiefs. He'll do that for us coming up in about 20 minutes. You got the Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365.